All right, everybody, welcome back to Boulder Uphill. I'm your host, Brian Whitehill, and this is episode 6 now. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome to. If you're returning, welcome back. There's a lot on my brain today, and I'm trying to formulate my thoughts about it all. Wow, this mic is hot. I tried recording this yesterday in my room, and turns out that my room just gets way too hot. And I tried turning on the AC, and the AC got too loud. So I spent all of yesterday's recording time trying to figure out a setup, and I finally figured one out. I think it's in my living room right now, and you can see my bar cart behind me, and I got this nice little palm tree neon light. So I think this is going to be it. Unfortunately, there's a lot of noise surrounding this apartment, and there probably will be for the coming months, because there is a literal building being built about 50 yards from my windows, and they start every morning at 7 a.m. and they go till about 3 p.m. Now, in my head, I think, why wouldn't you just start at 10 a.m. and go till 5 or so, But LA laws allow for 7 a.m. start. So 7 a.m. every morning, literally right on the dot, I hear hammers, which means I'm probably going to have to start going to bed sooner so I can try to get up around the time that they start. Anyway, I think for the recording stuff, I'm going to have to wait till after 3 p.m. to record. So it's mostly silent. You can hear hums and all that every now and then. And also there's an apartment on my floor that is now vacated. Wow, voice crack. Thank you. Vacated, so they're renovating that. So it's Hollywood living. We got all the things happening in the center of town. But formulating these thoughts. First off, thank you for everybody who has listened to all the episodes so far, but specifically the most recent episode. Lessons learned on that one in terms of Zoom. The audio quality is not great, and we tried to do the best that we could with Cliff being in Delaware and Andre being in New York City. And I think Cliff's going to be getting back to New York City this next weekend. But yeah, we did our best. It wasn't ideal, and usually in the pro stuff, I'm going to move this mic a little bit. Usually in the pro stuff, they all have professional mics, and it's just a lot more of an involved setup, but we didn't have that, so we did what we could, and thank you to everybody who listened. I think that it was a really important conversation, and it's a conversation similar to ones that I've had with them in the past, but it's a timely matter, and couldn't think of better guys to discuss that type of stuff with. I mean, there's just so much on all of our brains right now, and there's even more on my brain right now. And I guess, you know what? I guess let's just get into it, because when I started this yesterday, I was so calm and not frazzled, but there's just been like growing tension, not in my world, but just like in the online bubbles that I follow. And so obviously we all know COVID's a thing and it's happening still. And so everybody's still heightened from that. And then obviously the Black Lives Matter movement is ongoing. And so you layer all of that, and then, you know what? We're not going to even get there yet. But my birthday was this last weekend. It fell on Father's Day this year. We're not going to touch on that yet, because just before this, my brain went to a million different places, and I need to get it all out before I talk about anything else that I wanted to talk about. I feel like I just went through a breakup, and I'll explain to you why. Last week, there were allegations made against a fairly famous comedian that I've literally been following for the last 10 years. And this is someone that I found his stand-up, and I don't even want to name him because I'm too pissed at him as a person, and just pretty disgusted with the behavior there. And you know what? It's funny. I wasn't going to touch on this stuff yesterday, but naturally it's on my brain, and I have to. Oh, I'm so mad. I'm so mad about it, and I just want to get this out so I can talk about the good weekend that I had. Oh, um, God, it's so messed up. And there's more stories about other celebrities coming out too, and I hope that everybody has their voice heard. Um, so essentially, 10 years ago, I found this comedian while I was still in high school, and I really enjoyed his silly kind of humor and just like just really outrageous dude. Um, Physical comedy and just a bro. He had bro humor, and I thought that was funny at the time. But then he also seemed to have a humble side, so I was like, oh, cool, it's just a persona. I found it maybe when I was 17, and I remember sending his Laugh Factory videos to my friends, and they didn't find it as funny as I did, and that's okay. And then I just kind of lightly followed his career for a while, and I would watch all of his specials. And then maybe 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I started listening to his podcast, and it made me laugh on a lot of days that I wasn't in the mood to laugh. And when you follow someone's career for 10 years, only to find out that they're a garbage human and have a completely different side online than they do in person. And of course, this is nothing new. People and celebrities and actors have different sides, and we never see those sides. That's why I can only imagine what it was like for the people who were fans of the Cosby Show, and then everything came out about him. I can only imagine what that felt like for them because they grew up watching this guy. Wasn't he, the nickname for him was America's Dad, because he was just like this wholesome dude. Family show, comes out that he is a garbage human. Essentially, last week. So no, you know what? And so I listened to his podcasts for probably the last year and a half or so. Again, made me laugh on days where I wasn't in the mood to laugh. And even at the start of quarantine and all this COVID stuff, he was releasing videos that were like making light of everything going on. And he has a very specific following for sure. He knows and he knew that his demographic was dudes ages 18 to 30, early 30s. He knew that. And so he would kind of throw in misogynistic humor every now and then. And it was, I think, because everybody just thought that was a joke and part of his act. And because he would show his humble side on his podcast. And I get maybe in life, I don't know. Everybody just assumed it was an act. And clearly it wasn't. And so there are a lot of really troubling allegations coming out, and now with the obvious rise of social media, it's given a platform for a lot of anonymous people to come out about and share their stories. Now, of course, the naysayers there at the very start of all this, they were like, "Well, none of this is proven, yada yada yada." But there were screenshots and conversation. Essentially, this dude for the last 10 years or probably more, while on the road and while in his career, he's now 40. The last 10 years, he has just been preying on women and underage women, and just being an overall piece of, don't mind my language here, an overall piece of shit. And it's so frustrating because I feel for the women who felt like they, who I feel terrible for the women who felt like they couldn't come out about this stuff, and in life, who feel like they can't come out about this stuff, and who other people who have stories about other celebrities, and anybody who feels like they can't come out about this stuff because their career will be ruined. I just read one today, and it broke my heart, and it made me so angry. God, I shouldn't be tearing up about this. It makes me so angry for how many people have been wronged in that way, because the one that I read today was just bad. It was bad, and it just makes me so angry. So that's that's what the last week or so has been. Of course, that's the backdrop of it, and it's an ongoing thing, and I think I'm going to have to disconnect from it in terms of staying up to date and reading every story, because it's just going to overload my brain, and I'll have to just check in with it. I know the gist of it, and I think it's important that there's a platform out there for people to come forward about this stuff. It's. I started all of that by saying it feels like a breakup, and maybe that's not that's the wrong word. It feels like you just found out that someone. Well, no, this is literally what it is. Finding out someone that you admire and respect is not who they say they are, and is actually, in fact, the literal opposite of that. And so that, I think I'm just going to have to leave that at that, because I could talk at length about it, and I have with certain people who are also fans of his. But it also just goes to show that, number one, we only see what people show us, and that's why I do my very best to be transparent with my friends, and even online. It's like even with Instagram stuff. If I'm posting a photo, I feel I don't feel genuine if I like post some like cutesy little caption. Like I a lot of times I've ended up just like posting a paragraph of where I feel like I'm at, or like how I'm feeling when I post a selfie, whereas other people post a picture and they're like feeling cute, or like, what was it? I saw one the other day. What was it? It was like a photo of someone like at the beach, and they're like, "What's your favorite book?" And I was like, "What does that have to do with anything?" So I try to be as transparent as possible. Of course, you can only share so much online, and you only want to share so much online, but it's just a huge reminder that you should not idolize anybody. You shouldn't idolize anybody in Hollywood, or in general, or on social media, or anything, because you truly don't know who they are. And that's a harsh reminder, because there's a lot of people I look up to, and I don't want to have this backdrop of not believing anything that people say, people in the public eye say. I don't want to have that just like looming in my brain of like listening to Dak Shepard's podcast, and I love the guy. I don't want to just be like, oh well, yeah, who knows if he is who he says he is. Like, I don't want that, but I think you have to take everything with a grain of salt. So that's lesson number one. Did I have a lesson number two? I don't think so. Maybe there was, but it's gone now. So we're just gonna put a close on that, and that's the. Oh, and then maybe the second lesson was that in all the in all the comedy you hear, know that there are grains of truth in it. So when someone makes a joke, I was having a conversation with someone about this the other day. When someone makes a joke, there's a well established thing in the comedy world that you should be able to joke about anything, and I agree, as long as it's well crafted. I think like Ricky Gervais makes plenty of jokes and about all kinds of things. And I think that as long as there is care and consideration put into the kind of joke, if you can turn a serious topic into something that can bring people together, that's one thing. But if you can take an underlying problem and elevate it in one of your jokes, without regard for how it makes other people feel, it's just, if there's less care and consideration put into the joke to make it clever and make it not negative at its core, then great. But if you can't do that, and if you have cheap shots, and in this guy's case, misogynistic jokes, problematic jokes, that I think a lot of people, myself included, gave him the benefit of the doubt for. And now it's just clear that the guys who are like, oh yeah, you're gonna get triggered by this, am I gonna get canceled for this joke? Like, a lot of those guys are probably not going to put the care and consideration into their jokes. And there's probably grains of truth in there that they don't want people to know about. So in this guy's case, making jokes like that, getting his demographic to laugh at these things, only to find out that he is that and more and worse. So we have to we're gonna be done talking about that. I had to get that off my brain because this is, again, that's now officially, it's like, because I've spent hours listening to the guy, and it's now officially someone you remove from your life, and take what you've learned and move forward. So I've learned things from this, and now I'll move forward. And it's the same with, when ending on that topic and now going towards the topic of, like, breakups in general. I've learned, or people removing people from your life, or you being removed from people's life, whatever. I've learned things in the past from those experiences, and, like, for instance, I this always sticks in my brain. When I was in college, I dated a girl for about 2 years, 2.5 years, and when it was a very rocky relationship, especially our senior year. It was a really the program that we were in was a very demanding one, and so we essentially became teammates in that program. And even though we were growing into very different people, and I had a lot of, I'm sure we both did, but I can only speak for me. I had a lot of underlying things in college and a lot of insecurities that affected my behavior towards other people. I'm not saying I was running around being a dick to everybody, but when you're learning more about yourself from the age of 18 to 22 and onward, you can then look back and think, oh wow, I actually can see the motivation of why I was acting that way. So in college, when I was dating, who I was dating, we were just growing into different people. And I remember that relationship ended after senior year, and then I moved to New York, and she went to LA. When I was on the road with Mama Mia, I had so much time to think on the bus, that I remember sitting on the bus one day, and I'd finished, and we were God knows where, driving through Kansas or something. It was one of the long drive days, and I finished reading a book, and it's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And one of the points in that was essentially saying, like, take responsibility for the things that have happened in your life, right? And so I remember sitting on the bus, and the breakup was still kind of fresh for me ish. But then after reading that book, something clicked in me where I was like, oh, you know what? I remember now. There were a lot of things that I did wrong, and sure, there were a lot of things that she did wrong, but it takes two to tango. And so I looked back, and I learned a lot from that relationship. And now we're on good terms, and it's great because it's nice knowing, and I'm on good terms with all of my exes, and it's nice knowing that you can look back and know what you've learned and encapsulate it, incorporate it into your life, and move forward. So that's what I'm doing from all of this stuff. A constant factor of the last 10 years, following someone's career. Bottle that up. I've learned my lessons, and I'm moving forward. And I think that goes in line with what 2020 has been for me. For a lot of people, for everybody, for all the people, not just me. But in my personal life, with 2020, it's been the year of realizing what I take for granted, and now looking inward and evaluating. I don't even know the right way to say that, but I'll explain. So with COVID, and obviously everybody's, was quarantined and all that, it really shows how much we all appreciate seeing our families and our friends and having a social life and all the little things that we took for granted in our daily lives. Even for me right now, I'm in Hollywood. The gym opened up, which is great. And everybody's safe and wears masks in there and hand sanitizer and all the things. But the city's still kind of closed. Restaurants might start opening up soon, but everything's still kind of closed. And I'm the type of person that I don't need to go out all the time, but now that I don't have the option to, I'm I'm pissed. um, so in that regard, um, we all realized all the things that we took for granted pre-quarantine, pre-COVID. I'm going to take a sip of water. Don't mind me. And then on to the George Floyd protests and the Black Lives Matter movement that's ongoing. Um, that showed me, and I spoke with Andre and Cliff about that. If you haven't watched, feel free. Episode 5, or listened, watched and or listened. That showed me that we all, God, and I refuse to ever pull that crap like with that celebrity PSA video. Good Lord, that was cringy as hell. Have you guys seen that? Oh my God, I'm sure everybody's talked about it online right now, but that was some cringy BS. Good God, that was worse than the Gal Gadot video. And that, you know what, her name is pronounced Gal Gadot. I had no idea. I was saying it for Gal Gadot for the longest time, and then I watched her pronounce it on Jimmy Fallon's show, Gal Gadot. That PSA video that I take responsibility, good God, that was so bad. And I think it was worse than the Gal Gadot video, singing Imagine, like, by John Lennon, like 4 days into quarantine, all these celebrities like hanging out in their football fields of backyards and like in their giant mansions being like, imagine all the people live here. What? Okay. Go swimming in your pool. Anyway, I refuse to be on that level of cringe. Because that, my God, that take responsibility video was just something else. Like, I take risk, and like these actors looking at the camera like, I take responsibility. Like, ugh. It felt like actors acting, and anyway, I won't be that level of cringe, but I will say that everything going on really shows how much we as a culture, or a society, see, or a lot of us in this society see police brutality videos, and we get pissed at them and we go, that's terrible, and then we move on to the next thing and we kind of forget about it, or it's talked about for a couple days, maybe something happens with the cops, and then that's it, and then something else happens. And so it took that snowball effect for everybody to wake up and be like, hey, that type of stuff is okay. And from what I gather, everybody agrees that those cops and everything, all of that was wrong. So the current movement going on made me realize a lot that I take for granted, in my daily life, in a variety of ways, and ones that we touched on in the last episode, and I'm sure I will touch on again with guests maybe at some point in the future. But I will leave it as general as that. There's a lot of things that I take for granted that I can do and have not had to experience in my life. So another wake-up call in that regard. And now on to the third one that hit home for me, not necessarily for all of the U.S., but for me as a fan of somebody, and a lot of other fans, and I know so many people online that are just so disappointed and enraged and upset about this on a smaller scale compared to the global and national events. On a smaller scale, this is yet another wake-up call to take action against these kinds of things, that I hear about and that I don't necessarily see in my own life, but in general, to be more aware and take what I've learned and use it to be better, for not just for myself but for other people. To what's happening right now with everything I just talked about. There's a whole online platform for these people now who now feel comfortable coming forward, and I think that's amazing. And if we This sounds so preachy, and I apologize. I'm not trying to make this all preachy. I'm just taking what I've learned, and I'm going to segue into my birthday stuff because this all goes in line. I promise you. We're a half an hour in, so if you made it this far, thank you. Wow, this is going to be an easy episode to finish. We're going to go an hour and then call it. Getting hot in here. All of those things were wake up calls, and so 2020 for me and also for many other people in the country and in the world has been a wake up call year, and that's why I saw some posts online being like, "Hey, 2020 is not canceled. It's maybe this is." It was a little cheesy, but it was kind of true. It was like maybe this is the year that we all needed to wake up, and maybe now we can. I don't remember what it was. Maybe now we can. This is what we needed, and there was a lot of truth to it. I just can't remember it enough to actually make fun of it, and also there's not much to make fun of because it's true. But it 2020, man, 2020, crazy. So I think that's all I'm going to say about that in terms of the direction of the year. So what I will touch on now is my birthday. I turned 27 this last weekend, and it happened to fall on the same day. This setup, guys, I think this is pretty good. This looks good. I'm excited about this. I do need to get a fan, though, just to get some air circulation in here because I already feel myself starting to sweat. And with these giant headphones on, I feel even more like covered up. It's like wearing a mask at the gym. You get extra hot. That's how I feel when I have these giant cans covering my ears. My birthday, I turned 27 this last weekend. It fell on Father's Day this year, so there was kind of a joint, small family celebration the night before my birthday, and then I went to dinner with my dad on Father's Day. And so it was a good weekend, and I feel, number one, like I need a little water again. Maybe I'll just keep it in my hand as I overheat. I feel like there's been a theme to every one of my birthdays of the last 5 years, I would say. Pre-22, I don't really remember like how I felt about my birthdays, but I feel like because for me, 22 was like all right, you're off in the real world now. There's been a theme to every one of my birthdays. So like 22 was, okay, getting ready to pack up, go to New York, start a new life, quote unquote, and face the giant city of New York City. Alliteration, repetition, whatever that is. And it was exciting. It was scary. There was a lot going on in my life at the time in terms of like things closing, graduation, things in the family, and that was a really tough summer. There was obviously I had said that I had a breakup senior year, and then my grandfather had passed away that summer. That was a big summer, and so 22 was me being like, well, actually, you know what? Turning 22 at the start of summer. Not everything had hit at that point yet, but it was still a big thing. It was like, all right, September. Going to New York. 23 was in that weird stage before I went on tour with Mamma Mia. So it was kind of like in anticipation. I mean, I didn't have too many friends is that proper grammar? I didn't have that many friends. I didn't have that many friends in New York yet. I had lived with Andre for a year. So he and I actually went out for sushi for my 23rd birthday. And we went with this guy. God, that guy was such a dick. I don't want to go into it with too much with that, but that was a weird birthday. I went out with Andre and this guy, and that guy he ended up moving into, I had met him in class, and he ended up moving into our apartment while I was on tour and while Andre was at Alabama Shakespeare Festival for like a long time. He was there almost, I think, as long as I was on tour. And so this guy that we went out to sushi with on my birthday, that guy moved into one of the rooms in our apartment. And long story short, he wanted the biggest room in the house, even though it wasn't up for sublet. He wanted it. And he ended up calling our landlord, trying to get us kicked out. of our own apartment. He called up our landlord. He's like, hey, just so you know, there's multiple guys in this apartment that are subletting the rooms out. They're not even in New York City right now. So I just want to let you know that. And he was trying to get us kicked out of our own apartment because he wanted a different room. Crazy. And also ungrateful. We housed that dude. And it was a well-priced apartment. Super lame. So I look back on that birthday. I'm like, God, shouldn't have gone out with that guy. 24 was on tour. And that was fun. That was at the end of tour. June, end of tour. We finished in July. And so we were somewhere on like a 3-day break in some city that we were staying in just for those 3 nights. We didn't have a show there. But they didn't want to drive to the next city because the next city was an even smaller city. And I'm telling you guys, when I say small cities, there are cities you've never even heard of in the United States. There's cities that I'll have to look at the itinerary sometime soon. The 2 cities that pop out in my brain as cities that I did not know existed. Peru, Illinois. Did you know I can say that I've been to Peru. And I can say that honestly. And if someone says, "Oh my God, how was Peru?" I can say, "Oh, it's fine. I didn't do much." And they'd be like, "When did you go?" And then I would have to disclose I was on tour. And they go, "Wait, what? You were in Mamma Mia? You guys toured to Peru?" And then I say, Peru, Peru, Illinois. And they go, "What?" And I go, "Yeah, I didn't know it existed either." Peru, Illinois, and wait for it, Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Have you heard of that? I have not heard of that. But I think they enjoyed the show. Anyway, shout out to Peru, Illinois, Bartlesville, Oklahoma. My 24th birthday, we were in some city that had a little more to do than the next city. So we stayed there for a few nights instead of going to the next town where we were going to have a show in a few days. And we celebrated my 24th birthday at Buffalo Wild Wings. That was fun. And I had my whole cast there. It was like a big thing. Depending on the date, how things lined up, we would have like celebrations for the cast members' birthdays. Now, more often than not, I was a little too tired. So if it was like after a one-nighter, meaning if you're on the road and you have a show in a city on one night and then you leave the next morning, you get there that day, you go to the hotel, maybe take a nap, maybe work out, maybe. Then you do the show that night. Then they're like, "All right, guys, we're going to drive tomorrow. Get up 6, 7 a.m. And you're like, "What? We got done with the show at 11 and we're not going to be in bed till like 1. You want us to get up at 7? Okay." So one-nighters. Every now and then someone's birthday would fall on a one-nighter. And I would say, "Hell no. No way." But thankfully, my birthday. And you know what? We sang them happy birthday for those specific dates. It was just always nice when someone's birthday fell on a night where like, "Oh, cool, we're here for a few days. We can sleep in tomorrow, yada, yada, yada." So it just so happened that my 24th birthday, we had some time to sleep the next day. I wish I could remember where it was. I'm going to have to look that up later. I would right now, but I don't want to waste time. And then my 25th, I got to talk about my 25th. And also, apologies for all of you just hearing the history of my birthdays, but I promise you, it's leading to a great ending. My 25th birthday was probably my favorite celebration ever so far. I'm looking at you, 30. Hopefully, it'll be fun. We'll see. 25. I gathered like 10 or 12 of my friends, and we all went to a really good taco place in Chinatown, of all places. There's a really good taco place in Chinatown. Who knew? And then afterward, we went to a couple rooftop bars, and then my friend Tyler, who was with us, he broke off because he is the AGM at the gym that I used to work at, and so he was like, "Hey, we have an employee party tonight that I set up, and it's an open bar. I got to go set that up, but in a few hours, you should show up with everybody, and it's an open bar. You get the wristbands, and we can party there." And I was like, "Let's do it." And so we went to one rooftop bar, to another rooftop. It was like Rooftop 93. No, one place, I forget the name of it, beautiful, rooftop 93. Then we go to this place, I think it was called the Ainsworth, and we partied there. Then friends of mine from work joined us, and we all went dancing in Hell's Kitchen, and it was so great. And me and my roommates, we all Ubered home at like 3 in the morning, and then we all sat on my kitchen floor eating snacks and chatting till like 4, and we all slept like babies the next day, that night. 25 was an incredible birthday, and I think for me, I woke up on the morning of my 25th birthday feeling all the waves of nostalgia, because I'm a very nostalgic person, and moving to New York was a very big step for me in my life, like leaving a bubble of California that I'd grown up in, moving 3,000 miles away from my family. That was huge for me, and very difficult to do for me. So I woke up on the morning of my 25th birthday so overcome with like nostalgia and being proud of the last 3 years, and being sad at how much had changed, but happy about all the things that have changed. It was just an overwhelming mix of emotions, 25. And that's why that held such a place and holds such a place in my heart. And also, for some reason, in my early 20s, and I can say that now because I'm now in my late 20s. In my early 20s, I felt like, 25 is when everybody has their, for lack of a better word, everybody has their shit together at 25. That's just obvious. Because growing up as a teenager, you see people in their 20s and you're like, oh, that's an adult. They have everything together. They know what they're doing. And guess what, folks? As a 27-year-old, I can tell you that is not true. But 25, for some reason, was that cutoff. And I was like, when I got there, I was like, I haven't technically accomplished everything I want. Also, who has at 25? No one. Brian, why are you putting so much pressure on yourself, 25-year-old Brian? So that was just like an overwhelming sense of nostalgia on that birthday, and then feeling like I hit a checkpoint of adulthood, if there are checkpoints of adulthood, who knows? And then 26 was kind of the skip over year for me, honestly. That was last year, and I just moved to LA, and I was really I was excited, but I was very sad about all the friends that I moved away from, because I truly made a second family in New York, as I said last episode. So that was tough. That was a tough one. That was a complete change of lifestyle, and heading into the unknown, and being sad that I'd spent the last few years building such a base in New York City, only to then realize I have to try to do that in LA. Hopefully successfully, we'll see. Overheating again. So 26 was I was in survival mode. I was truly like trying to work a bunch to make sure I was able to pay myself back for my move, and it was just kind of a stressful thing. So it was, in my head, just kind of skipped over. I was just like, I don't even want to think about my birthday right now. But 27, and I told this to my friend Austin this morning, who I'll have on the show at some point. I feel like I now am officially the age that I feel. Huh? Does that make sense? I feel like the mold now fits. When I say 27, I'm like, yes, I feel 27. It's a respectable year. And I feel, of course, people out of their 20s are, if you guys are listening, you're probably being like, look at this idiot in his 20s talking like he's an adult. I don't claim to know anything. I promise. I don't know anything. But I do know that 27, I feel I'm like growing into myself more, and I feel like I have a clearer vision of what I want. And I also talked to Austin about this. I feel like I have now stopped putting such an immense time limit on myself, because my early 20s, I hit the ground running in New York and felt behind immediately, and like would compare my age with other people and be like, they're younger than me and they've done this, and they're older than me, but they were doing this at my current age. And I just put such a time limit on myself, and it's taken me so long, and it will continue to take work to understand that everybody truly is on their own path. And I feel like I'm one step closer to accepting my own path and that things take time. There. Sorry, my brain went off in a million different directions and I couldn't choose the avenue I wanted to take. But I chose one. And if that's not a metaphor for life, I don't know what is. So 27 feels good. I feel like a sense of calm, and I feel settled, and I'm trying to practice being more present rather than constantly thinking of the future / constantly thinking of the past or feeling like I'm not far enough, because it's not a race. It's not a race. It's a marathon. And this is actually, you know what? I pulled this up yesterday, and I want to share with you. Let's see if I can find it on preview. I want to share with you what I read yesterday as reference. In my acting class, that air conditioning earlier really didn't help much. In my acting class, we did this assignment called the 10 Commandments, where we essentially wrote the 10 rules that we, for some reason, have written for ourselves that we follow in life. And they're probably inaccurate, but for some reason, all of us, shout out to Matthew Corey's in studio, and I'm going to have Matt on at some point because dude's a badass, and he, built a whole Meisner acting studio that is a wonderful community in New York City. But we did this exercise where we wrote down the 10 commandments that we had written for ourselves in our life. And my number 8 was, you must have everything in life figured out by the time you're in your mid-20s. If you don't, you're behind. Oh, look at number 9. If people younger than you are achieving more success in their careers, you must stress yourself out and fall into a deep pit of self-comparison because, once again, you're behind. What's another one? If any of my friends or colleagues are accomplishing quote-unquote bigger things in their careers or personal lives, I must also accomplish those things, and soon, or else everyone will compare us and view me as the failure. Like, I wrote 10 of those similar things about different aspects of my life, and I read those out to the class, and people were laughing. And the thing is, we all had everybody's rules were just so ridiculous, and the lies that we tell ourselves and the realities we create for ourselves are so interesting. So the good news of me saying all that is that I can now look at that, and that was me at 25 talking, and that was just 2 years ago. I can look at that and be like, oh, well, thank God I don't feel that way anymore. Thank God I've learned something over the last few years. So I think when it comes to 27, I think that I feel good about it, and we're gonna leave the 27 talk at that. And I don't think that there's one thing I wanted to share, and that I think will be it. So I found this again, and I had watched this a while ago, and it's a video of Chris Evans, and I hope that I'm allowed to share it on YouTube /this. I hope that there's no copyright against this, but I found this the other day, and it goes very in line with how I feel looking back at my early 20s, and I'm sure, because I was also talking to someone yesterday who's in their 30s, and they were like, oh my God, I like my 30s so much more than my 20s. And I was like, oh, great, can't wait. But it's a video of Chris Evans where someone asks what he would tell his younger self. And I think that it's useful for a lot of people. But as I've said in past episodes, I used to watch a lot of like celebrity interviews and seeing if there's any insight that they can provide to how they got to where, or any influential people in any industry, how they've gotten to where they are, and the bits of wisdom they have. So this one I thought was useful. Let me see. Right here.
If you could give yourself advice, like look back and talk to the 12-year-old version of yourself,
Yeah.
What advice would you give?
You know what I'd say, and it might seem oversimplified, but it's profound. I'd say shh. It's been a big thing for me. Shh. You know, it's so funny how noisy my brain is, and Everyone's brain is noisy. It's what it does. It makes thoughts. And the problem is, I think in most of our lives, the root of suffering is following that brain noise and listening to that brain noise and actually identifying with it as if it's who you are. That's just the noise your brain makes, you know, and more often than not, it probably doesn't have much to say that's going to help you.
And that I found very useful. And I hope that you guys found some insight in that as well. And I think if the overall takeaway for me for my 27th is to, number one, acknowledge the things that I've taken for granted and that I can be grateful for. And I really want to start practicing that more. Whether it's, I don't necessarily like doing like a gratitude journal. I know a lot of people do that, but I've tried it before. And at the end of the day, a lot of times weeks being similar, if a week kind of is what it is and nothing crazy happens that week and I have similar days and it was a good week, a lot of times the gratitude at the end of the night always ends up kind of lining up a little too similarly. So I'm like, all right, I'm writing the same things down every night, which, hey, not a bad thing. But that's just why in the past gratitude journals haven't necessarily worked for me. But I do need to work on that. And so that's like 100% a takeaway. Realizing all the things I am grateful for. And there was one more takeaway. Oh, yeah. As I kind of said earlier, just recognizing my own tendencies and the snowball effects that have led me to where I am and how I've... my views in the past, like I just shared with you, and how I've acted in the past and why I thought certain things and why I acted certain ways. I think that it's always important to be evaluating ourselves and our behavior and our thoughts and beliefs to make sure that they're coming from a positive, neutral place. And I think that's it. Now that the construction outside is really, really kicking into high gear, and I'm overheating again, I think we're going to end it there, everybody. So we're at about 50-minute mark or so. This is episode 6 of Boulder Uphill. And if you want to follow on any social media, you can go to Instagram at Boulder Uphill Pod. You can go find me on Instagram at Brian Whitehill. And that's that. Happy birthday to Brian. And I hope, I really do. I hope everybody listening to this and or watching this, which is a surprising amount of people, and I'm so happy about that there's active listeners and viewers of this, not as much on YouTube, but listeners. That makes me so happy. I hope that everybody is hanging in there. And I refuse to get all weird and be like, in these trying times, in these unprecedented times, in these uncertain times. But for real, with the craziness going on, and everybody and the online world's going nuts, and the world's always been going nuts. The physical world has always been going nuts. That there's no doubt about that. I hope that you all are taking care of yourselves and finding things to laugh about, keeping in contact with friends, regaining contact with friends that maybe you haven't talked in a while, family you haven't talked to in a while. Hang in there, everybody. That's what I'm going to end this with. You guys are great, and thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And that's all we got for you today. Stay bold. Nope. I gotta say my name. I gotta end it with my name. Hold on. We're gonna get this right. And that's all for today, everybody. I'm Brian Whitehill. Stay bold. Keep climbing.